protecting yourself from identity theft. Now, what is identity theft? First, anybody in here had been a victim of identity theft? Oh, wow. 1, 2, 3. Hold on, everybody keep your hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 out of 15 people. So over half the room at some point has been a victim of identity theft. Now, for the others, identity theft happens when someone takes your identity, gets a credit card, buys a boat in your name, gets your funds, they've got a nice boat, and you have nothing but anger. That is identity theft.
What about like credit card compromise? Would you consider that? Like if you were at a gas station and had one of those deals and you have to have your card changed?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So these are all forms of identity theft, and unfortunately, today's fraudsters are doing nothing but getting more sophisticated. And so what I want to talk with you about today is really 4 things. And number 1, and that is why you are the number 1 target for identity theft. Number 2, how they do it. Number 3, what are some of the prevention strategies that you can put into place and how you can protect yourself. And finally, what to do if it occurs. Now, why you? Why do people, what did they used to ask? Why do people rob banks years ago? Because that's where the money is. Well, you have the money. Now, most senior citizens don't think, and retirees don't think they have the money, but the reality of it is you have the money. So that makes you the number 1 target. Another thing is your generation. You are, for the most part, a kind and generous group. Now, there are a few. I don't think anybody in here fits that bill, so that's good. There are a few that are not kind and generous, but for the most part, you are of the generation that doesn't hang up the phone, just say no, and tell people to take a walk. And fraudsters know this. They also know that you didn't grow up with a computer in your house. You didn't have a phone. I don't know about y'all, but my grandson is 6 and he can operate the telephone better than I can. And so you didn't grow up with a computer, so you are less apt to be security conscious than other generations. Your living conditions, when you live alone, when you have less time with family members, they know that it creates an opportunity, because a lot of times when you're older, you get embarrassed when it happens and you don't report it. You're afraid to mention it to a family member, because that cousin Tim, who can't manage his finances, decides that you can't manage yours and wants to come in and help. And so that's a huge fear that people have. And then finally, the cognitive decline when you get much older in your later years. Now, how will they target you? They will impersonate the IRS. They will impersonate the Social Security Administration. They will impersonate your financial institutions, your financial advisor. You need to be aware that it is all there. Now, the way they're going to do this, and your cue, is urgency and fear. Anytime someone wants you to act quickly, that's your cue. Act quickly, quietly, don't tell anybody. That's your red flag that goes up for identity theft. Someone is asking you to pay it with a gift card, a wire, cryptocurrency. These are ways that they do it. And finally, asking for a one-time security code. Here are a few emerging trends that you want to be aware of. How many people in here have heard about artificial intelligence? And 10 years from now, all the news talks about, well, 10 years from now, 5 years from now. Well, the reality of it is, it's not 10 years from now, it's not 5 years from now, it's right now. We need 1 second. A fraudster needs 1 second of your voice to clone it. So that means they can imitate your grandchildren. That means they could imitate myself. They could imitate anyone. And so now you need to be aware that if somebody is calling, wanting urgency, and you think it's a family member and they're acting out of character, they probably are out of character. So it's very important to be aware of. When you go to Facebook, how many Facebook users we have here? Most all the room use Facebook. Now, I saw it the other day. I saw this little phone ad where you got a free iPhone, and I was looking at that, and Andrea says, we get a free iPhone, we can just, I'm like, nobody's giving away a $1,400 iPhone. You have to be aware if it looks too good to be true, it is. The other place where we see a lot of identity fraud is healthcare. When you go and you have a $12 an hour person who's getting all of your medical information, they get your social security numbers. If you see medical billing, you have to pay attention to your medical bills to make sure that something is not off. Phone, text, and email scams. Getting text, you need to be aware with that. The IRS, they don't start with a text, email, or phone call. It's by mail. Number one source where people get their identity theft, one of the number one sources is through the IRS, because everybody gets anxious when Uncle Sam sends you a notice. Here are a few just examples to think about that are active and ongoing. Fake Social Security benefit threats, fake IRS refund messages that show up, fake bank account fraud alerts, and impersonation scams from financial institutions. Important to note, Facebook Messenger. We never communicate via Facebook Messenger. Your financial institution doesn't communicate through instant messages. You never want to share your private information through a messenger on a social media app. And so many people fall victim to a scam because they think that their institution was communicating to them, but we're not going to communicate through a Facebook Messenger. Here are the red flags. If you get a threat of arrest, now you think, gosh, that's far-fetched, but this is a way that they get people. Threats of arrest, benefit suspension. Most people in here, I know most of you pretty well, I don't think you're going to do anything to get arrested. So when you get the threats of arrest, pressure to act immediately, request for secrecy, and unfamiliar account activity. The moment you see unfamiliar account activity, that's your cue. Don't sit and say, oh, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. Investigate. Now, when it comes to preventing, as good as they are and more sophisticated people are getting now, you can be more sophisticated with just a few simple things that you can keep in mind. And there are 4 things that you can do, and I'm going to talk about passwords a little bit because I work with a lot of you and I've seen you in action, and I can say some are good and others I would have to rate as an F, because you want somebody else to create the password for you, you want everybody to know what it is, and you don't want nobody to know what your password is. And you don't want the same password for everything that you have in your whole life because it's easy to remember. And you want to change it. Second factor authentication. People call me demanding that we turn second factor authentication off. Well, last year I had a client, second factor authentication actually saved them, because so whenever, just as a little note, whenever you have a change on your account, your email, I get a little ping notification. And I was in the middle of a meeting and got this notification that a client had changed their email. Well, I knew the client and I thought, they're not that tech savvy. And so I finished up and Dana said, did you see? I said, yeah. I said, something's wrong. picked up the phone, made a phone call. No, I didn't change anything. So we did a little investigation, and everything had to line up for this to happen, but they were part of the AT&T data breach where they had their telephone and their email. So they were able to change their email address, and had it been any other institution, they would have likely gotten everything, because luckily whenever with our firm, nothing happens until we approve it and we get a verbal authorization. So when that happened, we knew to call. And so second factor authentication, I knew it was on, and I knew, wait a minute, something's odd, and I knew the person. So credit monitoring and account alerts, very important in this day and age, and you never want to share your social security number or security codes. Now this seems like, why is he saying that? Because we do it. It's like we know what we shouldn't do, and people do it all the time. And I get people ask me, hey, would you just enter this? And I'm like, whoa, hold up, wait a minute. That's not a good practice. And so I know if somebody's offering to do it with me, they're offering to do it with anybody, because it goes across the board. So you want to set up some boundaries to prevent yourself. Annual credit-free reports, fraud alert, freezing your credit. You couldn't get to my credit if you wanted to. I have it frozen. So whenever somebody wants to do something, I have to go in and lift it. Ongoing monitoring. These are the best practices. There are all kinds of services out there that you can monitor your credit, and it's very inexpensive to do.
How does the credit freeze work? What do you do?
So when you freeze your credit, no one can open an account or do anything and transact. They can't get a credit card. You can't go get a loan. You can't do anything that involves getting credit. And so it's a good thing. It's a pain in the rear. Let me say this. It's a pain in the rear, but those of you who've had your identity stolen know it's a pain in the rear as well. Now, what to do? And I guess I said if, and maybe I guess I should say when. At this point, considering half of the room had an instance like this happen. Number one is you have to stay calm. Now I get people who get in this situation and they call and they are absolutely frantic. They fear the worst. It's just a part of our life now. You have to remain calm, notify your financial institutions. The ones that were not affected, notify them. Because if I know something's happened and your other institutions know, it gets on your account, hey, they've been a victim of identity theft, they've changed their credit cards, etc., then you're aware of that. You want to change your passwords and PINs a couple of times a year. Some people say every 3 months. I know most people aren't going to do that. I'd like to do it, but I'm never that vigilant. But a couple of times a year, change your passwords. And finally, once it happens, you're going to have to talk to a lot of people. Get you a notebook and document everything that's said. Who you talked to, what time, and the date, and what was discussed. Because you have to show your due diligence, and that's important later on down the road. Here's a good structured, some tools for a recovery plan. Report it to identitytheft.gov. There are folks like AARP that have some fraud alerts. You want to review it, and you want to dispute it on your credit report, and then finally you want to notify your advisor for coordinated planning across the board. Tax and retirement account protection. Very important to think about. The IRS, like I mentioned earlier, they don't make a phone call to you. If they're coming to find you, believe you me, they're not good at picking up a telephone. They're not going to pick up the telephone and say, hey, we need X. that's a scam. If you see something, if you get a text from the IRS, it's not the IRS. They're going to send you the old-fashioned snail mail, and probably will for the next 20 years as fast as we know government works. They're not going to demand gift cards, and you think, gosh, this is silly to put up here, but this happens, and people fall for it, sadly. You want to use the IRS IP PIN. You're noticing your CPA uses the PIN, and you want to monitor your retirement accounts for logins regularly. Here are some trusted resources: identitytheft.gov, AARP Fraud Watch, the Social Security Administration, and the IRS with Identity Theft Central. These are important resources to be aware of should this happen to you and should you need to take action. This is our commitment. First Family Wealth. Some people have mentioned to me and said, hey, Dana asked all this information. You guys know who we are. Yes, we do. But we also know that with the new AI and voice cloning that we have to ask. You used to be, you could call in and I could recognize your voice and say, yeah, he wants a distribution. Good. I can make a note that they call. Well, now we have to ask something unique. So you might hear us ask a unique question like, hey, who's one of your beneficiaries? And so you may have to recall something, a couple of different questions, just so we can know without a shadow of a doubt that you are actually you asking. And so those are the enhanced things that you're seeing from us. And so just a few conclusions, and then we can have some discussion. Identity theft, it can threaten your retirement savings and income. They're going to use fear, urgency, and impersonation. Gift cards, wire transfers, security codes. These are the hot places that it happens. Use credit monitoring. Use it. It's a good thing. But more importantly than anything, if you ever suspect it, you need to stop. You need to verify. You need to, if you think it's a credit card asking you, you need to stop and you need to turn over the back of your credit card and look at that phone number on there and call that number, because that's the official number. That's an important thing, is know where the official numbers are for your financial institutions. And you need to report the suspicious activity when it happens immediately.